again, my name is Amber. Just a little bit more about myself. I have spent the last almost 20 years in secondary and post-secondary education, helping individuals, students reach their goals, achieve success. I've also spent time in nonprofits, project management, things like that. And so obviously in all of those areas, time management was really important for me and what I was doing. And also play attention is an important part. So we're going to talk all about that today as we get started. So let's go ahead. I've got a lot to get to today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So if you can relate to any one of these items here, raise your hand. Are you late for appointments? Do you often turn in reports late? Have you had to pay late fees on your bills because they didn't get turned in on time? Have you disappointed friends or families, partners because you forgot about special occasions or you were late for special occasions? Does your child, is it you? Is it your child? Is it your students? This webinar today is really for everyone, for both adults and for children, as well as for children at home, individuals at home, partners, co-workers, employees, individuals, students for your classroom. Really, there's going to be strategies and tips and information that's going to apply to everyone. So if any of those areas sound familiar to you, raise your hand. I did see a lot of hands go up, and I'm still seeing more hands go up. And so if those aren't familiar to you, why don't you share with me in the inbox? I'm going to go ahead and lower the hands of the attendees. So type in the inbox, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to learning more about today? If you haven't experienced anything, or even if you have experienced, go ahead and type in that chat box and let me know, what are those types of things you're looking for today in this webinar? Something brought you here, right? Something about time management. So why don't you go ahead and share that? You can just type that right in the chat box for me, and I'll share a few of those as we get started this morning. Maggie mentions getting up in the morning and going to work on time. So that's a great one. Hi, Rita. I'm glad you're here with us today. Jennifer says it's very hard for her to estimate how long things will take, right? How long is that time of things that will take for us to get done, whether it's a work task, a home task. Janet says, late is my middle name when it comes to time management. I never know how long it's going to take me to take a shower. I have another one here that says, I have adult clients with ADHD that have never used a calendar and are resistant to that. Why is that? And we're going to talk about that. So great question, Cynthia. We're going to talk about those tools involved or that are often associated with time management today. Staying on task so that it's completed in a timely manner, not on purpose. Strategies to tackle numerous projects of varying sizes, priorities, and deadlines. We're going to talk about priorities and deadlines today, David. So great question. Keeping my brain on track, knowing when to leave on time or be ready to go. That is a really great comment, Lisa, because sometimes we know when we're supposed to be there, but we're not quite sure when we should leave. What does that look like? Making sure we leave ourselves enough time. I struggle with many areas of time management, getting important tasks done, as many as I could in a day. Having ADHD, my internal clock is always off. And James, you led me to the next slide that I'm going to be talking about here, and that's time blindness. So many of you have brought up calendars or tools like that, and most of you have probably used a million different strategies, right? I've used the app, I've used the calendar, I've used the timer, I've used all of these different things, but I still struggle with time blindness. If that's you, go ahead and raise your hand. And time blindness, for individuals that are unfamiliar with that term, is very typical with individuals that are diagnosed with ADHD. And what's going on is they just don't understand the ticking of the clock. And not meaning they don't understand how the clock works, but they're just not aware of that time. They're not aware of how long it takes things to get done. They're not aware that they've spent 2 hours on one task that should only take 20 minutes. So they're very unaware of time and how to use it wisely. So if you find that you struggle with procrastination, getting started on tasks, completing tasks, struggling to be on time for things, struggling to get big projects done, and you feel like maybe you've disappointed yourself, you've disappointed your others, or you've experienced that with your children, there are things that can help. Okay. So many of you raised your hand on that again. So I appreciate that. That is very common. When we're talking again about individuals with ADHD, time blindness is very common. I have another scenario to ask, and this is a child, and I'm going to ask about child, but it could be the same for an individual at home. Have you ever had a morning where your child spent so much time deciding on what to wear, they didn't get any of their other morning activities done? And as simply as it could be a child, it could be an adult, right? I spent so much time deciding what I was going to wear this morning that I didn't get everything else done. Or do you experience where maybe your child is always missing the school bus, or you're late for work very often because that morning routine takes longer than we anticipate? And again, I'm seeing hands go up, and I'm seeing, yes, all of these different things. And, what's happening? Why is this happening? Because you know how to tell time. You know that tasks are due. You know that what you need to do in that task, and you want to be able to do that. Nobody thinks, oh, I just want to go ahead and be late. You want to be on time. You want to get all of those tasks done. So why is it happening? It's very common for the perception to be, if individuals struggle with time blindness or time management, that they're lazy or that they're unmotivated. So has anyone ever told you, or have you thought about that maybe of your child, even though you didn't express it out loud, that they just really feel like they're unmotivated about this task, and maybe they really don't want this job? Raise your hand if you've experienced that. You can also put things type it in the chat box as well, any information you want to share. And I'm seeing hands go up because many individuals that struggle with ADHD and time blindness have been told that they're lazy and they're unmotivated. But when we really talk about time management, individuals aren't being lazy. They're not unmotivated. They lack the cognitive skill necessary. So when we talk about time management, we need to get to the root of the cause. You've probably heard that before in other things. When we want to build something, when we want to fix something, when we want to get stronger, we have to get to the root of the cause. And that's why, and we're going to talk about strategies today, but that's why sometimes strategies aren't working for us, because we're getting a tool, but we don't know quite how to use that tool. And I'm not saying you don't know how to use a calendar or a timer, but you need that foundation. Your brain needs to be able to do that task. And so we need strong executive function to be able to have effective time management. So many individuals that are struggling with time management and time blindness, it's because they have weak executive function. And for these strategies and tools to work, we have to build that executive function, right? We have to be able to strengthen those skills for individuals. Let's see if I'm missing any questions here before I kind of move on. The recording is automatically going to be sent to you. So that was a question. Someone comment they have ADHD and fibromyalgia, which is not a good combo. And I know that can be very often you're seeing those comorbidities, right? And you see that comorbidity of weak executive function with ADHD, and we're going to talk about that and how we build it. So we need to have that strong executive function to be able to have that strong time management. So time management, using our time wisely, is the ability to be productive, to get on a task, to get that task done in the appropriate amount of time, to be able to stay on the task until it's completed, to be able to avoid that procrastination, right? And we need strong executive function. And when I talk about executive function, if you haven't heard that term before, are mental skills that are required for us to be effective day in and day out. Our executive function helps us with many different day-to-day type of activities, helps us stay attentive. It helps us with organization. It helps us with time management, helps us with our emotional regulation. It allows us to do so many different necessary skills day in and day out. So these are the different areas of executive function on my chart that you see in front of me. And what I want to do is I want to talk about how each piece of this chart, how that area of executive function specifically affects time management, because you'll all see it's all interconnected. And that's why strengthening that executive function allows us to have that effective time management. So we'll first start with working memory. So working memory is my ability to take in information and retain it so I can complete a task, right? So I'm getting instructions, I'm following a list, I'm going through doing an activity, doing a task. It could be my morning routine, it could be a task I'm being asked to at work. And when we struggle with working memory, it affects our time management because we're constantly and consistently going back and rereading those instructions. So I read them, I start my task, and then I think, what was number 2? I go back and I read it. And then I go and do number 2, and then I think, oh man, what was number 3? And when I constantly go back and forth, that is not effective use of my time because I'm taking longer to do a task. That task probably should have only taken me 20 or 30 minutes, but now maybe it's taken me an hour or more because I'm constantly having to go back because my working memory needs to be strengthened. Emotional regulation. So emotional regulation, this can affect our time management because if I start doing a task, then I have a very emotional response to it. Maybe I get really upset, get really frustrated. It's very hard for me to stay on that task when I'm having those very big emotions, when I'm having essentially that emotional dysregulation. Not only is it hard for me to stay on task and sustain my attention on that task, once I recover from those big emotions, it's very hard for me to get back on track. So you can see where those that dysregulation in our emotions could really affect how long it took us, or even if we're able to get a task done at all. Mental flexibility. So mental flexibility is our ability to freely move from one task to another. Sometimes that's required of us. We're working on something and then our boss comes in and says, hey, can you run this report for me? I need it in 10 minutes. So we make that adjustment. We do that. If we're unable to have that mental flexibility, it can really affect our time management because maybe we're not able to get off that task and get that other task done in that quick amount of time that I need. I'm hyper focusing in, and that's giving me a lot of detail, but I'm leaving out all of these other tasks that need to be done. So at the end of the day, I didn't use my time effectively. So having that ability to freely move from one task to another. Self-monitoring, that's really understanding how I'm doing, being aware of the time that I have available to me, being able to use that time efficiently, and being able to not have that time blindness, understanding that I need to be fully focused, that I need to be engaged, that I only have a certain amount of time to get this task done, or this task is a very important task for me to get done. And so I need to be able to monitor my ability to do that going forward. So again, if I'm not able to understand time blindness in myself, if I'm not able to, allocate the appropriate amount of time to something, I'm going to have a very hard time, again, completing all of those different things that need to be done. Organization, task initiation. I almost skipped it. And of course, task initiation is one of the most, one of them that we've talked about the most. That's procrastination. So that makes complete sense. If I'm struggling to get started on a task, that task is going to take me much longer than anticipated. because I didn't get on it right away. And also, I might start rushing to get it done. And if I'm rushing, I could be making those mistakes. Organization and prioritization, both of these are very important to being able to manage all of the tasks that we have to do. And because they're so important, I've got 2 activities later in the presentation today that we're going to look at that you can really work on helping your strengthen that organization and prioritization around time management. And then finally, we have inhibitory control. And inhibitory control is my impulse control, right? So if I'm struggling with impulse, very much I may have a task that's necessary, right? I have to balance my checkbook. It needs to be done, or I have to pay that bill. It's due today. You know, we talked about in the beginning, have you ever received a late fee because you didn't pay a bill on time? And so I have to do this. I know I need to do that, but I sit down to do that and my impulse pulls me somewhere else, and then somewhere else, and then somewhere else. So I'm not able to stay on that one activity or that one task until it's completed. And you could experience this with your children or your students in the classroom, where they start on something and then they want to hop to something else and then something else, because that impulse is looking for that stimuli. They need that high stimuli, and it's very hard for someone to maintain their attention on something that's more mundane, challenging, maybe boring, even though it's a very important and necessary task. And so that can affect our time management, because those necessary items that we need to get completed aren't going to get completed. So I hope that helps a little bit understand why strong executive function is so important to have that effective time management as we go forward. Now, on my screen are a bunch of different tools, and many of these were shared earlier when I asked. I heard calendar, we talked about apps, checklists, timers, and many of us have used all of these different tools. But even though these tools are important to have in our toolbox, the only way for them to be effective for us is if we address the root cause of our time management, or our weak time management. So let me say that again. The only way that these tools are going to be effective in our toolbox is if we get to the root cause of our weak executive function, which is strengthening that executive function, right? We have to address the ability to strengthen those areas of executive function so that we can have that effective time management. And now all of these tools in our toolbox are going to be really effective. And that's why you're probably thinking prior to this slide, Amber, I've tried everything. I've done them all, but I'm still struggling. And you're still struggling because we have not got to the root of that ineffective time management. So one area that play attention can help with that, right? So you may have done assessments in the past of your executive function, but you may not have. And we need to understand what areas we should pinpoint to help you. So when we talk about executive function, there's not a one size fits all. There's not a box that everybody needs to fit in. Everyone's different. Some people may have comorbidities that they are experiencing, ADHD, it could be anxiety, depression, maybe a traumatic brain injury. We see all of those different diagnoses also have a comorbidity of weak executive function. Now, we want to be able to pinpoint those areas that you specifically need to strengthen. And we can do that through our brief assessment. So this is one of the assessments that Play Attention offers. It's a questionnaire-based assessment. So it's very simple to do. We send you the assessment. You will answer 75 questions on different scenarios. And it's a behavior rating. It's an intake of your executive function. So it's asking you how you behave in certain scenarios. And once you get through all of those 75 questions, that brief assessment is going to break down those answers by executive function behaviors. And by doing that, we can see, okay, this is where John might be struggling. So he feels like he interrupts very often in social situations. He feels like he makes careless mistakes. he feels like he's rushed by nature. So by looking at those different things, those all fall under that inhibitory control or the lack of inhibitory control. So we want to make sure that we're putting in modules, and we're going to talk about that, to exercises to strengthen that inhibitory control for John. So this is a really great tool to see that baseline of where you are right now and allow us to pinpoint those areas that need to be strengthening. Essentially, we're going to be able to complete a plan for you. You're going to give us that assessment, that baseline, and we're going to take that information and create a plan of how we're going to build that effective time management as well as executive function. So this is one tool we have. We also have our focus assessment. It's a norm-based test of attentional control. It's going to look at the same types of areas. The difference is you're actually doing activities in the focus assessment, and it's norm-based. So you're going to be compared to your peer group. So we can see, are you below the norm for attention, above the norm, on the norm? What does that look like? And so we do have assessments available. If you're, listening to me and thinking, well, Amber, I know I struggle with time management, but I don't know all of those areas you showed on that pie chart. I don't know if I struggle in some of those areas or not. And this will allow you to find that out. And we're going to talk at the end of the presentation today. If you're interested in doing one of these assessments, we do have a special offer that I'll share with you. And so it's something that you can get started with today if it's something you're interested in. So stay tuned. We will be discussing that. So now, once we have that pinpointed assessment, we can now help you cultivate that time management, because we're getting to the root cause. We're seeing what specific area, like I said, we're pinpointing those areas that you need to strengthen so that we can make that time management effective. So now you have that ability to have that strong executive function. So now that calendar is effective for you. That timer is effective for you. All of these different pieces we've used in the past, we are able to use those and we're able to move forward. So you're still probably thinking, and this is the reason why individuals attend webinars, is what can I do today, right? What can I do right now? How can I cultivate that understanding and appreciation of time, right? Why do all of these things matter? And that's what we're going to be talking now in the second half of the presentation. And this is where I'm going to start sharing with you activities, because we want to talk about, how is your current time allotted? How do you prioritize your time? How do you organize and prepare for your day? And how do you avoid multitasking? And many of these things you've probably heard of in the past. There are things that you've learned and you've gotten tips and strategies about at webinars, but we're going to put a little bit different spin on it today. We're going to talk about the why. Because often when we understand the why, it's much easier for us to make those changes. And I'm going to show you that why through some of those activities. So we're coming up on where I'm going to talk about some activities that are going to really give you that concrete understanding of why you might be struggling with time management in that certain area. And those activities are going to be really helpful. And then we're going to actually do the one activity that I told you to get a pen and paper for. So when we start talking about different strategies, one area I like to talk about is, how is your current time allotted? And I'm going to have to move my head just a little bit for this. So what I want you to do, a really good way to understand how your time is allotted, is writing it all down. And I'm talking about every single minute of every single day, because sometimes we think, oh, that only took us a little bit of time, or, oh, I just went from work to home. But when you think back, you're like, oh, I stopped at the pharmacy. I stopped at the post office. I did this, right? Or I hit traffic. So I want you to take a day or 2 days. If your day is fairly routine, or your weeks are, your day in and day out is pretty routine, you can just do a day. If you kind of have a schedule that's a little bit irregular, you could do a couple days. But what I want you to do is, I want you to write everything down. What are your appointments? What were your appointments for that day? What were your meetings for that day? Did you, if it's for yourself, did you have to take your child to school that day or did they take the bus? If you can do this for a child as well, break down their time as well. And teachers are more than welcome. And usually you get a schedule at the beginning of the year and you can fill some of those blanks in when they're at school. But log your time daily. So put all of that information in it. And for a couple of days, log your days and look at it in a schedule format. That's what this last one says up there. Look at it in a scheduled format. And you could use a Google Calendar, you could use a paper calendar, anything that's going to give you a really good visual of your full day. And that is really going to help you see where you're allocating your time. And this is a great one if you come home and you're like, oh, I'm going to pick up and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I'm going to prep for tomorrow. And you sit down and maybe you start watching TV, and TV is very highly stimulating, very easy to get roped into, because especially with streaming services, we don't have commercials. One, I don't know about you, but we enjoy watching Ted Lasso at our house. And when we watch it, it quickly goes from one episode to the next episode. And I know everyone is guilty of saying, oh, just one more episode. Next thing you know, it's midnight, right? And we were going to do all of those other things, but they didn't get done and that's where I want you to keep track of your time. And I want you to keep track of your time without judgment. This is not meant to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you spent so much of your time in this one area, but it's to give you that understanding and really give you that visual of where you might be losing chunks of time or where things might be taking too long. So this is one strategy that you can really use that's going to help you with time. Now, in addition to that, I want you to use this activity. And these activities can be used. This isn't the one we're doing together. You'll know when it's time that we're doing the one together. But these are all activities you can do at home with your child, with your family. You can do with your coworkers in the office. The one that we're going to practice with today, we did all of that yesterday as a team. You can do this in the classroom. You can use these activities anywhere. And what they're doing, again, is providing you with that concrete understanding of why you might struggle. So number one, I talked about breaking all of your time down. However, and someone shared with this earlier, I'm sorry, I forgot who it was, but they're just unaware of how long something should take. And they get into something or they're late for something. And that leads me to the question is, how long is a minute, right? We need to develop that concept of time, because if I don't know how long a minute is, I'm not going to know how long 10 minutes are. I'm not going to know how long an hour is, right? I'm not going to know that I need X number of minutes for this because I really just don't have a clear understanding of how long a minute truly is. And that's where our exercise comes into play, this first activity. So this first activity, what you're going to do is you are going to have individuals close their eyes, or put their head down so they can't see. And you're going to have them just be there. And when they feel like a minute has gone past, they're going to raise their hand. Now you're going to have somebody there that's actually timing, right? That doesn't have their eyes closed, that can keep track of the time. But what we're doing here is we want individuals to close their eyes. And then when they feel like a minute has gone past, raise their hand. And then we're going to let them know when a true minute has gone by. And so individuals are going to see, do I think a minute is faster than it really is? Do I really think a minute is more like 2 minutes? If you didn't raise your hand and the person says, okay, it's been a minute, that really shows, and it can be either way, whether I am experiencing it and I think the minute is longer than it really is or shorter than it really is. And this is a great, again, concrete activity for you to really work on that concept of time. So something's really easy. You don't even need to have anything but your timer, and everybody has a timer on their phone now. So that's one way to work on that concept of time. The second thing, or the third area we want to talk about, is prioritizing your time. And so who here, and again, you can raise your hand if you've experienced this, is you've sat down to do something that is a necessary task: bills, budgeting, a schedule at work, schedule at home, a grocery list, right? You get started on it. And then all of a sudden you find that you're doing something fun. Maybe I'm on the internet, maybe I'm playing a game, maybe I'm scrolling through social media. And all of a sudden, I'm not doing that activity that is necessary for me to do. I'm doing something that I enjoy, something that's fun. And the reason why is because it's fun, right? We know that it's easier to do those fun activities, those highly stimulating activities. But we have to do those tasks that are necessary. Because if we do everything that's fun in a day, we're going to learn really quickly that we're not going to have enough hours in the day to do everything. And sometimes we do overcompensate what we can get done in a day. And that's why going back to that slide I just showed you, the minute exercise is really important because we need to have a clear understanding. Plus, going back to the first activity of logging everything, you're going to get a really good idea where you might be missing chunks of time. So when we look at what we need to do, let's look at how we're allocating our time, right? Are we spending too much time on the not as important or not needed or fun versus the necessary? And the why is because we're not going to have enough time in the day. So the next slide is another really great activity for you to do. Now, this activity, you're going to be required to have a few more materials than the first one. But this is really going to show you the importance of understanding the importance of prioritizing. This is called the mayo jar activity, and you may have done this before, but your day is represented by a mayo jar. Okay, so just a normal average size mayo jar. You'll need rocks and pebbles. You'll need some sand. You'll need some gravel, maybe some, thicker sand, maybe some thinner sand, and then water. And so I want you to answer this question. How do you think, I want to fit all of these things I have into the jar. So what order do I need to put the things into the jar to make them all fit? Okay, that's what I want to do. I want to take all of these materials and I want to fit them all in the mayo jar. Okay, so what order do I put those in to ensure I'm going to be able to get all items in the mayo jar? Does anybody have any thoughts, or they want to answer that for me before I go a little bit further? We want to get the gravel, we want to get the rocks, the sand, and the water all in that. Okay, so I see someone that says sand last, which yes, but we want to get a little bit more specific, right? Knee, largest to smallest. Correct, because think of the water and the sand as those really fun activities, right? I'm so excited. I'm going to watch a Ted Lasso on Apple TV, right? I'm so excited. I'm ready to, sit down and watch it. But over here, I didn't do the laundry that I needed to do for tomorrow. I didn't pack anybody's lunches. I needed to pay that bill today. Those are all things representative of rocks and gravel, but the sand is wanting to watch TV. And if I fill up my jar with the sand first, the other items aren't going to fit, right? So you need to think of your big important activities are the rocks, right? Those are the rocks. Those are the pebbles. Paying the bill, the doctor's appointment, the meeting at work, getting to work on time, doing that large task at the office. Those are all those big rocks, right? We need to start with those first, because when we start with those big items, you're right, bigger in the mayo jar, and then the rest of it fits in because it can fit in those cracks. And so the why behind that, all of this is, if we do those important things first, we're going to have more time for those fun things because we're getting them done, we're getting them out of the way. So that is a really great thing, a great activity, again, to use with children. This could be done in the classroom, this could be done at home when they're asking, why can't I just, go on the YouTube or go on the iPad first? Why can't I do this first? Why can't I do that first? And that's a great way to show them, very visual, very experiential, in that process behind it. And it really shows you why it is so important that we prioritize those necessary and large things first, so then we can get those other things done as we go forward. So thank you for participating with me. We also want to organize and prepare for our day. That's really important in our day-to-day. We need to leave time for that, because when we take time in the evening to prepare for our next day, we're organized, right? We have something on we know what we're going to do. We have something on the list. We're ready to move forward. We don't have to get in the morning and think, oh my goodness, or I get up and I'm trying to do all of these activities, but I only have a shortened amount of time, right? So some of the ways you can prioritize your day or organize, prepare for your day the day before, make lunches the night before. Anybody here does that you can raise your hand. We all do that in our house. Everybody's a teenager. I have teenagers and older in my house now. And so everybody's responsible for their own lunch, and you make your lunch the night before, because it just makes things so much easier in the morning. And I do see some of you already do that. Make a priority list for the next day. So this is great to do for home, for work. And I like to use the eat the frog first, right? And so if you've never heard eat the frog, it's telling you to put that most important thing on the list first, right? The very most important thing, something that might make us a little anxious. It sometimes feels overwhelming, but when we put that off towards the end of the day, statistically, it doesn't get done. And then it gets put on to the next day and the next day and the next day, and we're never getting that task done. And so when we eat the frog, we put that task as our very first and sometimes only thing to do for the day. Because once we come in and we do that task, now we're open for all of these other things to get done. Someone mentioned I make lists and can never find the list. And that's why Lori, that's a perfect example of why we need that strong executive function, because you can make the list. The list is the tool, right? The tool in the toolbox is the list. But if my working memory is weak, right? If my memory is weak, I'm never going to remember where that list went. So that's a perfect example of we have to get to the root of it. It's not the list that's ineffective. It's the fact that we need to strengthen that area of our executive function around our memory. So great. Thank you for sharing that. That really helped tie those things together. So that's another, when we talk about lists, sometimes individuals have a hard time because they put too many things on their list as well. So sometimes we put 25 things on our list, and that's just impossible. No matter whether we start with our rocks first, that's just not going to get done in a day. So there's a really good methodology of starting with 3. What are the 3 most important things I need to get done today? And focusing on those and not getting overwhelmed by the huge list that I have ahead of me. Pack and set out your bag the night before. This is another thing that we do. I work hybrid, right? So sometimes I work at home, sometimes I work in the office. And so the days that I've been home and the next day I'm going to go into the office, I always pack my bag the night before. That way I'm not forgetting my mouse or my charger in the morning. All of those things are together while I'm not rushing, while I'm not feeling extra stressed. And then the last one, my head again is in the way, is leave reminder notes by the door. That's what this one says. So leave reminder notes by the door if necessary. If you have a tendency to forget your lunch, your phone, probably not your keys, because you'll end up coming back in and getting those because you'll need those, or turning off your curling iron, things like that, leave a note by the front door. Leaving a note by the front door allows you to see that before you walk out the door. So these are some strategies as well. But again, we need to get to that root cause as we're moving forward. So I want to give you the why, or again, a very concrete activity behind the importance of organization. We know organization is important. We know people, we've all met the people that are very super organized, and you're like, wow, that's just amazing how we do that. But I want to talk about the why. And if someone is like, well, I can find it in my pile, why do I need to do that? I want you to do this activity with them. So you need at least 2 people to do this activity. Each has a deck of cards. One deck of cards is going to be shuffled and mixed, right? There's no prioritization or organization in that deck of cards. The second deck of cards, we're going to put it in order. So we're going to put all of the suits together and we're going to put it in chronological order. And you're going to give one deck to one person and one deck to the other person, and find out who finds the ace of spades first. Who do you think is going to find the ace of spades first? I'm seeing it come off of my list. Yep, the organized deck. Now, of course, someone's going to say to me, oh, well, there's going to be random luck, and there could very well be random luck. But if we look at consistency and time again, that organized deck is where that ace of spades is going to be found first, because the order makes sense. And so that is another really great concrete example to do with someone, activity to do with someone. So we're getting close to our activity that we're going to be doing, but first I want to show you this slide. And we have been told for years that multitasking is the way to go. That's how we show true productivity, but that's not true. We know that the brain is not able to do more than one thing really well. The brain's not able to split along 2 or 3 things. It can only do one thing well. So in looking at this picture, the one thing that she should be doing well is driving, right? And because when we're driving, and we're focused only on driving, we have less of a chance to have an accident, right? But we know with multitasking and text messaging that individuals are more likely than a drunk driver to actually get in a car accident, because their brain is being required to do multiple different things when it can only do one thing really well, and it should be driving, okay? And so when we start talking about multitasking, and a lot of individuals are going to be like, I don't know, I really think that I can multitask. I want you to use this activity. And this is the activity that we're going to be doing together today. So go ahead and get your something to write with, something to write on. If you have a timer on your phone, I'm not going to be able to project my timer because of the way that my slides are set up, but I will be calling out time. So I will be using a timer here, but if you want to use your own timer on your phone, you're more than welcome to do that. And what we're going to do here is we're going to debunk the myth of multitasking. We're going to do an activity here that could be a real eye opener for you, and just something to, again, really show that concrete of what happens when we're trying to do multiple things at one time. Okay, so go ahead. Now, I am going to be giving you instructions, so do not start until I tell you go. I'll give you plenty of time to get started, but I want to share the instructions with you first. So in this activity that we're going to be doing today, we're going to be writing 2 lines. On one line on the top, we're going to be writing the myth of multitasking. And on the bottom line, we are going to be writing the numbers 1 through 21. Now we're going to be doing this twice. The first time, and we're going to have a minute. I'm going to time you at a minute, and I'll give you 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 in a minute, so you have an idea if you're not using your timer. But in the first round, what we're going to do is I want you to write a T. And again, don't start yet. We're going to all start together, and I'm going to time you. But what you're going to do in this activity is going to simulate multitasking. So we're going to write a T, and then we're going to write the number 1. And then we're going to write the letter H, and then we're going to write the number 2. And we're going to go on and do that for this minute. So we're going to do T1, H2, E3. So I had to think about it, right? E3. And then we're going to say and I'm going to pull it up here one more time, the myth of multitasking, but you're alternating, right? You're not doing one and then doing the other. You're alternating. You're requiring your brain to do 2 different tasks at one time, because it's working on 2 different pieces, and they're letters and numbers, so totally different. So I'm going to get my timer set up. So go ahead and get your piece of paper ready. Go ahead and get your timer ready. Of course, we're going to do this in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you to go in just a second. I will tell you 15 seconds. And if you're not using your own timer, you can put a little dot at the 15 seconds. I'll tell you 30, you can put another little dot, 45, another little dot, and then 60, because we're going to do it a different way next. And I want you to be able to compare the 2 together. Okay. So everybody ready? So get your paper. Is the space considered a number as well? Well, the space is kind of there because we're breaking up, right, the myth of multitasking. So I just want you to write it like you would say the myth the myth of multitasking, and then you can do kind of have your numbers that way. So, okay, we're going to get started here. I'm going to change the slide because I want you to remember too, we're using our brain in a couple different ways here. So ready, remember T and then the 1, H and then the 2. I'm going to tell you 15, 30, 45, and 60, and we're going to stop at 60, and you're going to share with me how far you went, and then we're going to do the second round. Okay, ready, set, go. $15 seconds. $30 seconds. $45 seconds. $60 seconds. Okay, go ahead and stop. If you finished, raise your hand. I just want to see if anybody was able to finish, right? Did anybody finish prior to 30 seconds? Okay, I see someone completed at 31. Okay. But there's a lot more that completed versus completed prior to 30 seconds, right? Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and lower your hands. So now we're going to try the activity again, but this time we're going to do one task at a time instead of comparing, right? We're going to just write the myth of multitasking. Once we're done with that, we're going to go down and label 1 through 21. So instead of alternating, we're just going to do the myth of multitasking and 1 through 21. Okay, so you're doing them each individually. Again, I'm going to time you for a minute. I'm going to give you 15, 30, 45, and 60 seconds. And I want you, if you did those dots or you timed it on your own, I want you to see the difference between the two. I'm going to go ahead and let me change my slide here. Ready, set, go. $15 seconds. $30 seconds. $45 seconds. And stop. Okay, so funny. Nichelle had told me earlier she completed it at 31 seconds the first time. And I can almost bet she finished that before because she messaged me that she was done. And I'm pretty sure it was before the 30 seconds. So how many of you were able to get it done the faster the second time, right? So how many of you were able to get the second one done faster than the first one? And I know in my experience, I was able to get both of them done as well, but I did it significantly faster the second time because my brain was focused on doing one thing really well. And I don't know about you, but you had to, when you did the first one, you had to really think and think, okay, what is the next letter? What's the next number? And count. And that takes longer to do than if we were doing one task really well, right? So this is a really great activity. Like I said, we did this yesterday. Oh, Nichelle said 31, she had 2 mistakes, and she had to go back. And then someone also said the first time they misspelled multitasking, but the second time they got it on the first try. So so that's a great point that was just made to me that is important as well. So not only were we able to get it done faster the second time, but we had less mistakes. So we think when we're multitasking that, oh my goodness, I'm getting so much done. But most of the time it's taking us longer and we're making mistakes and we have to go back and fix those mistakes. Whereas if we just did one thing each time, just one thing, we're actually going to have more time at the end to do the fun things that we want to do. So I just want you to keep that in the back of your brain. And this is a really great activity, especially to use with individuals that are like, no, I think I'm a great multitasker, or they do that. And if you're working with smaller children, you can adjust the sentence. You could say the cat in the hat. You could say, I love school or something. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can adjust that. That saying it doesn't have to be that, but just having them do those 2 activities versus one and then one is very, very concrete. It really gives them that aha moment of why we want it done one way versus the other, or it's more effective one way versus the other. So again, to summarize what we've talking about, I know we're getting close to time today, but to summarize what we're talking about today, tools and tips and strategies are great, but we have to remember, for those to be effective, we have to get to the root of the problem. We have to get to the root, right, of the reason why we have weak time management. And that is developing that strong executive function so that we have that strong time management. So I want you to take that away. I want you to remember that. And that's probably different than what you've heard in the past and might be kind of make things a little bit more understandable because you've tried all of those things. Well, the reason why is because we have to get to that root. And so briefly, I do want to just mention, Play Attention is designed to build strong executive function. We're the only program that integrates advanced NASA-inspired BodyWave technology with cognitive skill training and behavioral shaping. Because when we provide you the right tool and the right challenge, we're able to strengthen your brain and we're able to build neural pathways necessary for those executive function skills, right? We have to have that. We have to build those pathways for our brain. And all of our cognitive exercises are brain enabled, meaning with just your mind, more specifically your attention, you're actually going to be able to operate all of your training modules, all of the exercises. So you're using just your attention alone. And that immediate feedback along with that challenge is what is helping spark that brain change, because that's what we want. We need catalyst present to change our brain. We need to spark that brain change. And so we're incorporating attention, deliberate practice, and challenge so that we can change the brain and strengthen that executive function. Play Attention cognitive exercises include all areas necessary for strong executive function. So if you think back to that pie chart we looked at earlier, or that circle chart, every single one of those areas of executive function we can work on, we can train, we can build for that strong executive function. So I want to just take time again to talk about time management and talk about how we need, again, to get to that root problem. Play Attention can help you with that. We can start with that assessment, really, and pinpoint those areas that we need to strengthen that executive function, and then create a plan to help you move forward in that process. So as we wrap up today, I'm going to go back in and look and see if there are any questions I've missed or any comments that I've missed. But in the meantime, if you want to know more about Play Attention and a Play Attention plan for you, you can type in consultation. We will schedule a one-on-one with you. They're usually about 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll talk specifically about you and help develop a plan for you on how to build your cognitive skills around executive function. Additionally, if you're interested in that brief assessment, so I mentioned earlier when I talked about that brief assessment to hang on to the end because we do have a special. Normally our brief and focus assessments are $50 a piece, but as a thank you for attending, they are $25 each. So you can do one of those assessments, either the brief assessment or the focus. And if you're not quite sure what to use, one of our associates would be more than happy to walk you through that. But you can do that assessment, and with that assessment, there's also a review where we will review those results and give you your play attention plan. So then we will develop that play attention plan for you and show you what next steps would look like, how we're actually going to strengthen that time management through building that those cognitive skills. So you'll do the assessment, and then there's usually about a 30-45-minute review where you review those results and will help you create a plan. So if you're interested in doing the brief or focus, maybe you don't know which one, you can type in assessment. Again, those will be at half price, $25 a piece. If you know you want to do the brief, type in brief. And we'll be happy to connect with you afterwards. We'll take payment, and then we'll get that assessment sent over to you. And it's something you could do today, where you can go in and do that assessment, and then we can schedule some time, either, maybe tomorrow or next week, and go through those results with you. So again, if you're interested in just understanding more and pinpointing those areas of executive function that you need to strengthen, the brief assessment is a really good tool to do that. And then if you're interested in our next webinar, we are going to start working on summer. Many schools are starting to get out, families with summertime, even, adults, as maybe my summer schedule adjusts a little bit as I get into the summertime. And so we're going to start talking about ways to keep our minds strong over the summer. And so if you're interested in that, those are the topics that we're going to be starting to cover at our next webinar. So if you're interested in just being signed up for that next webinar, you can type in webinar. So thank you so much. Take care and have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.